r/AskReddit. Women of Reddit, what is your nice girls finish last story? Several years ago I had a close friend that I had feelings for. I felt like at times he did too. There were hints, but I was afraid of ruining the friendship and I imagined he was in the same boat. We had met at a time when we were both going through a relationship turmoil and we cried on each other's shoulder a lot, so it felt like we were never emotionally ready to date each other anyway. I was his wing woman when it came to all his crushes. I felt those girls were prettier, more interesting, and he liked them, so what could I do? He had a crush on a certain girl he worked with for a while. They became friends over time. I was happy for him, but unhappy for me. She didn't pay him much attention though. They mostly just saw each other at work and texted. If they ever had group plans, she'd cancel. Eventually he got tired of her flaking out, and the spark kind of died for him at that point. Then one night, when we were talking about life in his car, we did this often, and it seemed like something would happen between us. He received a text from this girl. She asked him to come over to her apartment and watch movies/eat. Just them two. He told me he wasn't going, as he hanging out with me first. Trying to be the nice cool friend, and finding myself afraid of being left alone with him much longer. I told him he should go. He seemed surprised and asked, "Are you sure?" I said something like, "Of course, this is your only chance, don't ruin it." He insisted he wouldn't drop me off at home to go with this girl, but I told him to stop being dumb and just go. If my memory is correct, I think I said, "I know you want to." So he went. He dropped me off and went over her house. He said nothing happened. They just talked for a while and had some drinks. I believed him because he had no motive to lie to me, and he hadn't lied to me about other girls he'd been with. I just felt flawed and like I had literally handed my opportunity to someone else. Actually, not just handed it over, but wrapped it in a nice present wrapper, tied a bow, and had it delivered with flowers. Nice girls finish last version. We were together, then he broke up with me. It's been over 6 months, and we do everything exactly how we used to. That is FWB, except now we are just friends. Even though he knows how much it hurts me. He gets me to bring him food to his house all the time and can have sex whenever he wants to. We hang out so much, he has joked. Even if I was hitting up someone from Tinder, it's not like I could hide it from you. We see each other every day. Accepting responsibility for my actions version. I forced him to put a label on our relationship so that I could stop feeling constantly paranoid and jealous. Then he grew weary of it and broke up with me. It has been over 6 months and we have both contributed to the situation we are in now, which is a FWB relationship, which he prefers, and I don't. He knows this, but I also know I'm free to put a stop to it at any time, but I don't. I constantly seek validation from him sexually, and so the only times we have sex are when he is in the mood. My monthly food budget is about 1.5 people's worth, because I have chosen to make bringing him food after work/school a way to initiate hanging out for the rest of the day, because his physical presence is comforting to me. An unforeseen but advantageous side effect of how often we hang out is that I never get jealous, since he doesn't have time to hit up Tinder anyways. I made decisions that I stand behind, but I would change some items. I made more than my husband when we married. Not by much, but more. My mother died soon after we married, and most went into a house. The 2 kids had disabilities, so I stayed home for 5 years to get them back on track. My husband decided to start his own business. I started freelancing in my field and was offered a full-time job. He asked me to work for him, and I did that instead of my own career. 5 years with no pay, 5 years at $500 a month, and 4 years at minimum wage. I have very little in retirement. I have low prospects at another job. My social security is very low and now depends on him. My family, his family and most friends are so proud of him and seem to ignore my contribution. I live a good life now. No worries about day-to-day money. If my husband decides to divorce me, I'm royally screwed. I also have an ego that bristles. Don't be like me and support only the dreams of others. Remember to pay yourself first. I had a crush on my current boyfriend for nearly 6 years before we started dating. We chalked it up to mainly bad timing. Either one was in a relationship or the other one was. When we finally got together, I came to find out that not only did boyfriend have a crush on me too, but a close, mutual friend of ours had explicitly told him not to go for me because said friend selfishly wanted to try to go for me himself. Sad thing is, our now ex-friend is married and was back then too. I considered this person a close friend, but he ended up being a womanizing ass bag. Because of this asshole, we both ended up in several horrifically shitty, abusive relationships before finally getting together years later. At least there's a happy ending. Thanks douche. Edit. I apologize if I misunderstood the meaning of nice girls finish last. Took a quick glance at work and furiously began typing. I think I thought it meant something else, but regardless, most of you guys have been great and more than understanding. Either way, thanks for letting me vent. There was a guy I had a crush on in high school from the time we were freshmen. He was absolutely infatuated with a girl who was a senior. She had absolutely zero interest in him, being 4 years older and all, but still he pined for her. And I pined for him, doing my best to become his friend in the meantime. Over the next 4 years he did everything to get her to notice him, even joining all of the same clubs and extracurriculars she was in. By the end of our sophomore year I was done waiting for this to subside and started to talk to and date other guys, though I still remained his best friend. We had become close, and I really did care about him. Sadly this was mostly listening to him complain about how she never noticed him. He was perpetually depressed. I still sort of hoped that one day he would just stop focusing on her for a moment and look at me. When we graduated high school he obviously went to the same college she had chosen and picked the same major, even though she was almost done there. I picked a different college because I was done listening to him pine for her at this point and had a steady boyfriend anyway. After college I reconnected with him on Facebook. I saw no sign of Caroline on his page or friends list, and being hopeful, asked him if he'd like to get dinner. He said yes, and I went to pick him up. I had taken a really long time to get ready, get my nails done, have my manicure done, and I was planning on asking him if he wanted to start a relationship that night. About halfway through the dinner he said, "I'm actually really glad you called, I've been feeling really down lately. Caroline just got engaged and asked me to be a groomsman in her wedding." I listened like the good friend I was. I politely finished dinner. I finally gave up, and I have never talked to him again. Back in high school, I was in love with one of my best friends at the time. We went to a concert one weekend and he out of the blue asks me to prom. So I get super excited and start to think he has a crush on me too. Over the next few months leading up to prom, we hung out all the time. He'd give me rides home from school. We spent the weekends together. I even called out of work to go on a boating trip with him and his family. I thought I was so in. Well, prom time came and everything was cool. We double dated for dinner, and I felt super good about where the evening was headed. As the dance progressed, I decided to grab him during the next slow song and try to force a romantic moment. But when we got on the dance floor, he held me at arm's length and didn't look at me the entire time, which made me feel really awkward and stupid. The rest of the dance was meh. Afterwards, he invited me to his house to watch a movie, and of course I say yes. So we get there, he puts on a movie, sits on a different couch from me entirely, and then falls asleep. Meanwhile, he drove us to his house and I don't have any way of getting home. This is before Uber, and it's 2 in the morning, so I have to wake him up to drive me home. The whole car ride, he doesn't say a word to me. Then he pulls up to my house, doesn't even put the car in park, and just says see ya. Oh boy was I devastated. I confessed my crush on him a few days later and all he said was I love you, but I'm not in love with you over MySpace. The guy I was dating at the time always ditched me every weekend in the summer to go to the cottage with his parents. Not only did he still live with them at 28, but he would hang out with them in the middle of nowhere every weekend instead of wanting to see me. For a while I went along with it, because I assumed this is how things were, we would get together during the week, but I felt I deserved weekend status. Eventually I got invited to the cottage, and it was just awful. He had also invited his close friends to stay the week as well, and they weren't too bad. It was the parents. I have psoriasis, and at the time it was really bad and pretty much everywhere. On the first day we all went swimming. As soon as I walked out in my bathing suit, his mom reacted, "What is that? Is it contagious?" Not only do I already feel bad about the way I look, but then you have to point it out in a rude way. When I tried to explain what psoriasis was, they didn't believe me. It took my BFS friend who was a nurse, and I say that because she was actually a personal support worker, but his mom always talked her up as a nurse. It took her to explain what it was, and for them to believe that they couldn't catch it. That was just the first day. Needless to say, we broke up when we got back. He's married now to a pale-skinned girl, which I'm sure they're happy about. On a good note, my skin has cleared up since then. Made a certifiable best friend my sophomore year at college. We were both studying in Ohio, but originally from Indiana, so we carpooled to visit home. We became inseparable, and I bent over backwards to help her with any little thing. She was even the one to let me know that we would be applying to transfer to a school back in our home state, where her boyfriend attended. I wasn't thrilled with paying super high out-of-state tuition, so I agreed. Flash forward a year, we are settled at our new college and she's cheating on her boyfriend. Hooray. I convince her to break it off with him. I was still good friends with the guy and trying to hook up with his musician neighbor, so one weekend, while attending one of his house parties, he pulls me away to bemoan his breakup and go on and on about how they'll get back together, they're destined for each other, etc. I felt bad for the guy, not only because he was a super nice dude, but also because his ex-GF, my BFF, had her new boyfriend in her dorm room and were going to town. I cracked. I grabbed him by the shoulders, told him, "Don't you ever tell my BFF this, but you need to move on. She has. She's happy and you deserve to be happy. Just let it go." Next morning, my best friend has sent me Facebook messages galore calling me a traitor, awful person, etc. So yeah, I lost my best friend at the time because I told her ex-BF to move on. In hindsight, she was a pretty awful friend. TL. Doctor told my best friend's ex-BF to move on. Best friend called me a traitor. I dated someone through the end of high school and most of college. We started out completely in love and constantly together, and then drifted into, well, let's just say I thought we were always in love, but looking back, it's clear we weren't exactly on the same page. This guy graduated from college a year before me and invited me to his graduation. I hauled ass for nearly 2 hours on the subway to the other end of New York City. Didn't know where his family was sitting and all his friends were in the ceremony, so I sat alone for the whole boring thing. Afterwards we met up and said hi to his parents, who then went home. I was in college in another city, so I was looking forward to spending some one-on-one time with my boyfriend, who I didn't get to see that often. We went over to his dorm, where he informed me that he still had to move all his stuff out. Where were all his friends? Nowhere to be seen. Strong guy neighbors? Nada. Family? Gone, obviously. So who was going to help him schlep all those heavy boxes down to his car? Why, his sweet, loving girlfriend, of course. I don't remember how long it took, but I was glad when we were finally done, because it meant I was finally going to enjoy some romantic time with my guy, right? Haha, no, silly rabbit. No sooner did we finish shoving the last box of crap into his car than he said, "Well, thanks for your help. I'm going to go hang out with my friends now." I thought we would be spending some time together, just the two of us. I spend most of the year 200 miles away. Dumbus. Yeah, no, I want to go see my friends. The ones he has been hanging out with like every single day. But you can come too, I guess, if you want to. I declined, and went home. The penny finally dropped, as they say. I finally understood what he felt for me, which was nothing. Then I spent the next several months solidly kicking myself for being that dumb. I can't say my love life has been perfect since then, but at least I know I will never allow someone to take me for granted that way ever again. Edit. Wow, my first Reddit gold. Thank you, kind stranger. Had a close male friend who had a rough breakup with his GF who cheated on him multiple times. We had always been attracted to each other, but timing had never been right. After a while he asked me out, and I told him it might not be a good idea, as he seemed to still be affected by his ex. He waited a few more months and asked again, claiming he was over her. It was one of the best relationships I've ever had. We truly loved and cared for each other, and had so much fun together for over a year. We discussed moving in together, and our respective families were quite happy for us. Then his ex moved back to town. Even though she was living with her new she decided she wanted her ex, my partner, back. And apparently he wanted her back too. I discovered him cheating, which broke my heart. He claimed he didn't know what to do because he loved us both, but ultimately chose to be with her. Now they are married but unhappy, as she got pregnant by another guy just months after their wedding. The whole situation makes me sad still. I can't even feel the slightest bit of schadenfreude. Edit. Thanks for all the kind words. I never imagined my sad sack story would be noticed, really. A few updates. After we broke up, we did that cliched thing of missing each other and hooking up a few times in the immediate months post breakup, when he claimed he hadn't committed to her yet as he told her he wanted to take it slow in their reunification. He said he really struggled with loving two such different people at the same time. I know, I was stupid. I finally put an end to it by taking a job assignment to another country. I was heartbroken. Gutted, really, but moved on. I don't miss him, and thinking about what happened just makes me feel sad for him, not sad for myself. I'm quite happy where I ended up, as I never would have taken the overseas assignment had we been together. Not so fun fact of this debacle, they had invited me to their wedding. What the fuck? And no, I didn't attend. I used to, and still occasionally do, bartend at a dive bar of ill repute. The other bartenders treat the bar like their own personal cooler, take advantage of the drugs being tossed their way by customers, frequently get too wasted to effectively work, disappear into the stockroom to fuck customers, while the bar is still open, and of course overcharge customers to pocket the extra cash. I don't do any of these things. Don't do any of the drugs offered to me. For the most part, stay sober so as to be able to count money and always let shit-faced customers know when they've accidentally given me a $10 bill as a tip, when I'm sure they meant to hand me a $1. I have a boyfriend and let the more amorous customers know that I'm faithful, and there's no chance. I try to be a good employee. I still get regularly blamed for stealing or drinking the liquor, I guess, because everyone else always does, and the owners are paranoid. Went on a date with a guy I met through my friends. They're married. It went great, texting every day, etc. A couple of weeks later, our friends invited us to hang out. After a few drinks, we started playing Never Have I Ever. It ended up coming out during the game that I've never had sex. Long story. He stopped talking / texting me after that. I found out a few weeks later that he started sleeping with one of our friends that was over that night. They started dating soon after that and coming over to hang out. Then my friends mentioned all of us going bar hopping. It sounded fun, and I was game. Then they said, actually, would you mind babysitting the kids? You're responsible and we trust you. Besides, it's gonna be couples going anyways. I learned that day that responsible fun. At least I have a great job and a motorcycle. I was infatuated with this guy in my first year of college. We hung out, he lived on my floor, and I really wanted to go out with him, but I was too nervous. So one day, I bake a tray of brownies. I make them from scratch, spending hours to impress him with my man-catching baking skills. I bring the brownies to his room, wearing what amounted to a homework dress, and knock on the door. Just a minute, he shouts. There's some clambering and rustling, but I make nothing of it, thinking he must be playing video games in his underwear or something. Turns out, he was rushing to put clothes on because he had a sex worker in his room, and he thought I was in RA coming to investigate the 30-something-year-old woman he had brought into our dorm. Long story short, I ate the brownies by myself that night and he never spoke to me again, perhaps out of embarrassment at being caught paying for sex. This is probably going to be buried and is a completely self-indulgent sob story, but w/e. In high school I had a massive crush on a guy, and everyone except him knew it. We finally ended up in the same class one year, and, to my surprise, he seemed really interested in becoming friends with me. So we became really good friends. We would hang out after school all the time, stay up all night texting. I'd go over to his house on weekends, shit like that. Then he messaged me one day saying how in love he was with my best friend and asked me if I could help him get her. So I did. I figured he was never going to like me the way I liked him, and I had no right to hinder any relationship he wanted with other people. So I told her he liked her. She didn't resist as much as I'd hoped she would, and they got together. They dated on and off for the rest of high school, and he and I remained really good friends. I pretty much became his relationship confidant. I would be woken up at 3 AM because they had a fight. I had to listen to him practice guitar songs he wanted to play for her. I had to listen to him stress about having sex with her for the first time. He even cried in front of me a few times over her. And, yeah, it hurt a lot, and I was heartbroken for years, but he was my friend, and I didn't want to let unrequited feelings turn me into a bad person. It wasn't his fault he didn't love me. Then they broke up for good, and after a bit he moved on to a new girlfriend and completely cut contact with me. I was a really supportive girlfriend for 3 years who was happy to hang out just once a week, around his busy schedule of hanging out with his friends and playing Xbox. I drove everywhere because he couldn't be bothered to learn to drive, even though his parents bought him a car. I was enthusiastic and gave about 400% more oral than he ever reciprocated, and that was the limit of it because of some dead bedroom issue he was struggling with. In return, he never hung out with my friends or did any normal couple stuff like road trips or weekend trips away. I was in a car crash and he didn't bother to come over and see if I was okay because he was busy hanging out with his best friend he hadn't seen since the day before. I was devastated when we called it quits because I genuinely loved him with my everything and put all of myself into the relationship and he wasn't a bit bothered. I'm so glad I got out though, because I have an amazing boyfriend now who loves me and spending time with me. I can't believe I put up with that shit for so long. My ex actually is a nice person and we are on friendly terms. I just hope he grows up and becomes less selfish. I repeatedly lose guys to my best friend. Sometimes I realize that they're not nice guys, but sometimes it's guys that I really like who end up treating her really well while she treats them terribly. She's very rude to all her boyfriends and starts every relationship off telling them I'm gonna dump you in 3 months when I get bored with you. A lot of them think she's joking, and then 3 months in, there she is dumping them. I can't tell if she's doing it on purpose or not because I never tell her I like the guys, so I don't know if she's picking up the vibe that I like them or it's completely coincidental. I've told her before that she does this and it's almost like she doesn't care. She just tells me act more outgoing and interesting when we meet the guys and they won't go for her. The worst part is a lot of the guys admit to me later that she's a bitch to them. They regret going out with her or that they should have went for me when they had the chance. One painful dude in particular told me I wasn't physically his type, but she was and that's why he went for her. This may not be the kind of loser in love story you might be looking for, but definitely a case of me being way too nice and bad things almost happening because of it. When I was in my teens, I liked riding my bike around the river belt in my hometown. Small city, 50,000 people. I did this most weekends, weather permitting, and I usually did it pleasantly alone. One day, I was doing my thing and this middle-aged guy bikes up next to me and invites me to race him. I didn't want to, I was having some quality alone time, after all. But I agreed. Because it was the nice thing to do, and, like so many others, I was raised to believe that I should make people feel comfortable and happy. So I raced him, and he started taking the race beyond where I usually go, to a secluded area. I started feeling worse about this, but was young, and didn't understand, yet that I can say no whenever I want. We're in the secluded area and the race ends. He starts asking me a lot of questions. I don't think I can use my age as an excuse. I was straight up dumb by telling him where I actually worked. I worked at the library close by. I don't remember any other details about what he asked or said because I was so freaked out that I had actually told a strange middle-aged man who convinced me to follow him to a secluded area where I work. At this point, I thought of some reason I needed to get out of there and biked away. A lot of those details are hazy to me, but I distinctly remember the next few weeks of work at library, filled with fear that he was going to find me. Important lesson. Never forget that your safety is always more important than someone else's temporarily hurt feelings. Sometimes you have to say no for your personal safety and GTFO. Edit. Thanks for the gold. Friendo. Thank you so much for watching the whole video. Please leave a like and subscribe.